Hey book friends, I am Stephanie, your literary hype woman, back with another episode of Literary Hype. Today my author guest is Mandy Hale. Her new book is called Turn Toward the Sun. She's got several other books out there. You might know her as the single woman on the internet. So she talks about why this book is more vulnerable than some of the other ones you might be used to seeing from her, and kind of a little bit on a different track.
Hi.
Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
Oh gosh, I'm out here in this dating world again. So ready to dart out in traffic. How are you doing?
But better than that. So your new book, Turn Toward the Sun, is now out in the world. How are you feeling about letting this baby go?
I feel really great about it. The feedback I've gotten from readers has been phenomenal. I always love any feedback I get from my readers, but for this book in particular, I've heard a surprising number of people tell me that it's their favorite book of mine that I've ever written. And that really took me by surprise because, I don't know. I don't really know that I could pick a favorite book of mine, but you never know when you write something and put it out there in the world, how it's going to be received. So the fact that I've heard that now several times, obviously it feels amazing.
It's definitely the most vulnerable book, I think. Like talking about your dating life is one thing. That's like girlfriend talk. But to open up about your parents' cancer battle and the anxiety that came with that is a whole different level. Why did you decide to open up that part of your life?
I felt like it was a story that needed to be told. I feel like the last 2 years have been so challenging for everyone, not just for me. I think in addition to the global pandemic that we've all been forced to contend with and learn how to navigate, everyone I know has been going through personal challenges, whether it be they lost someone to COVID, or they lost a job during COVID, or they were isolated and alone for a year and it caused, depression and anxiety. I think we've all been through the ringer over these last couple of years. So while everyone's journey might not look exactly like mine does, I think that everyone can relate to the feeling of just feeling like you're in this really dark tunnel and you're searching for the light. And I wanted this book to be that light for people.
You have a very special relationship with your readers. It's how we met in the first place and became friends in real life. What kind of feedback are you getting on that side of your story so far?
Yeah, just kind of what you said, the vulnerability, my readers have definitely said that they feel like it's my most raw and emotionally charged book. I think a lot of people at this age in particular are dealing with well, at my age, you're younger than me, but I'm in my 40s. So a lot of my readers and followers are around my age. And I think they are all starting to contend with health issues with their parents. And they're starting to kind of experience that same full circle relationship where you go from, the parent taking care of the child to the child taking care of the parent. So a lot of people have connected with that part of the story in particular, because they're going through their own individual situations with their parents, maybe not cancer in particular, but, Alzheimer's or just whatever particular health challenge their parents are dealing with. They recognize that journey and that sort of bittersweet, but also really beautiful full circle journey. So that's been a really cool thing to see people connect with that part of the story in that way.
The subtitle is Releasing What If and Embracing What Is. It's kind of really the core of the book is the what if versus the what is.
Yes.
Where did that thought process come from for you?
Again, going back to the last couple of years since 2020, the dumpster fire that was 2020, I think we've all been sort of trapped in this sort of anxiety spiral of, when COVID hit, what if someone I know dies of COVID? What if I get COVID? What if I lose my job? What if life never goes back to normal? And here we are 2 years later and life still isn't really back to normal. But And then on top of, already dealing with pandemic anxiety, then to have my parents later on in 2020 back to back within 1 month of each other to be diagnosed with cancer, the what ifs just spiraled out of control. And I tend to trend toward anxiety in the first place. And so it was just a constant paralyzing fear of, what if my parents don't make it? What if I'm not strong enough to get through this? What if I end up completely alone after my parents are gone? What if? And so in that moment, my dad actually, he had sort of this mantra where he would say, we're not going to live in the what ifs, we're going to live in the what is. And then to kind of piggyback on that, my therapist, she liked to remind me, 99% of these big what ifs that we worry about never come to pass. And even if they do, if you torture yourself in advance of the big scary thing with the what if, you've really forced yourself to live through it twice. So that, my dad's mantra and what my therapist shared with me, it really sort of grounded me back into the present moment. And I knew that with everyone kind of being in just this, our world, it just feels very dark and heavy and divided, and more so at this moment in history than any time in my life. And so I think a lot of people are dealing with anxiety and stress and fear and what if this happens, what if that happens. And so I wanted to share my own journey of learning how to, I'm certainly there, I'm not completely free of the what ifs. I certainly still have my moments where I question, what if this, what if that? But I think I've learned just through the last couple of years and the journey that I've been on, not just with my parents in the pandemic, but with dating and with friendships and with career and faith and all these other aspects of my life. I think I've really learned how to be more rooted in this present moment and to realize that really this is where my power lies, where all of our power lies. It's not in yesterday. We can't do anything about yesterday. It's not in tomorrow. We can't do anything about what's coming tomorrow. All we really have is the here and now. And so I knew that was such a valuable lesson for me. I thought that it would be a really valuable lesson to share with the world.
And in the book, you do mention that you feel like it's really important for Christians, especially, to know that it is okay to have anxiety in Jesus,
Yes.
Especially with the way the world is right now and like more conversations about mental health. How's it been being someone that's like at the forefront of that conversation in the faith and mental health space?
I feel very encouraged because I think that the conversation has shifted a lot, especially over these last few years, where it used to be, oh, you should just be able to pray away the fear, the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, the whatever the mental health issue may be. I think now people are starting to see, hey, sometimes it's not as simple as that. I mean, that's not to say that God can't heal you miraculously and that fast. He can. He can do that with any disease, any physical ailment. He could do that with my parents, but he hasn't. And so that's why they're going to see doctors, and that's why they're going through treatment. So I think that when we remember that a broken heart or a broken spirit or a broken mind is just as real as a broken leg, we realize that, hey, you wouldn't hesitate to go to the doctor if you had a broken leg. You wouldn't just sit there and stare at your leg and say, I'm going to pray that God, puts it back together. You would go to the doctor and you would seek treatment. And I think that that's what it's so important to remember, that the same thing for, mental health issues are just as important, if not sometimes more important than physical health issues. So I really think the tides are turning. I really think that people are starting to see, that it doesn't make you a bad Christian if you need some outside help. And in fact, Jesus created doctors for a reason, and they're there, to help us and to treat us and to, help us move past whatever mental or emotional ailment we might be suffering from.
In writing this book, like, you're in the midst of a lot of personal turmoil. Did that affect your writing process at all, or how did your writing process change over the last couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think the writing process itself changed. I always sort of have the same process. I go deep into hermit mode and don't really don't really move from my chair for as long as it takes to write the book. I have to just really shut everything else out. So in a way, it almost kind of maybe weirdly helped, because actually with the last two books that I've written, we've been, in these weird pandemic times. And so there was none of that fear of missing out. There was none of that, oh, I could be doing all these fun, exciting things. Nobody was doing any fun, exciting things. So I was able to sort of retreat into myself and get the writing done and do what I needed to do without really feeling like I was, shutting off my life too much. But the emotional process was definitely, it was very intense, just reliving the stories. I mean, the whole book isn't heavy. There's definitely some light and some laughter too, but particularly the first half of the book, it was hard. It was very hard. It was rather like, sitting in front of the blank page and just bleeding onto the paper. And so, yeah, there were moments when I had to stop. I had to walk away. I had to take a breather. I had to, just kind of step away from the computer and get away from it for a minute. And there were moments when I wanted to escape the whole thing and just never finish it and just say, I can't go there again. But I'm so glad that I did, because it ultimately, writing for me is very healing. It's very cathartic. And I think that was the case here. I think I was able to, in telling the story, find a lot of peace and see how powerfully my family and I were carried through those first few really, really challenging, awful, heartbreaking months. So I think everybody should sit down and write their life story, because it really is just really eye-opening when you see it all on the page like that.
What's the best piece of writing advice you've ever gotten?
Oh gosh. Don't edit yourself. Like don't, you're not trying to sit down and write perfection the first time you write. You just want to sit down and get it all out. There's always time to go back and make it pretty and make it grammatically correct and fill in the missing pieces, but just sit down and tell your story. And so that's really what I do. I really just kind of sit down and write, and don't try to, I don't edit myself too much as I'm writing. I just sort of tell the story and let the story go where it will. And I think also something that's really been key for me in the book writing process is sometimes you write the book and sometimes the book writes you, and you have to let the book become what it's going to become. And you might set out to write one book and you end up writing a different one. That's what happened with this. That's actually what happened with my last two books. I had one idea in mind, and then as my life unfolded and as my story unfolded and as the writing unfolded, it became something completely different. So I think you have to give yourself permission to to not be perfect and to deviate from the path when the story calls for it.
Are you writing anything now? Like, what's coming up next for Mandy?
I'm not currently in the thick of writing something. I have several ideas. One in particular that I'm excited about is exploring friendship, just adult friendships. Actually had an article that came out today that I wrote about friendship and about how I lost a lot of my close friends through the process of the pandemic and my parents' diagnosis, and how painful that was. And I think that a lot of people feel like that right now. I feel like the pandemic really affected a lot of friendships. I feel like once people are in their 30s and 40s and beyond, we really don't know how to meet friends, how to keep friends, how to navigate single friends with married friends. So I think there's just a lot of questions that need to be explored. So I don't know for sure that that's my next book, but that's definitely an idea that's on the list.
So on social media, you've had some mentionings of a podcast. Do you have any more concrete plans for that yet?
I don't have concrete plans, because I keep the ideas. I have one idea and then I change to this idea, and I don't, I'm not a technology driven person. Anyone who listens to this who wants to help a sister out, I don't even know where to begin, to be honest. I'd had sort of a partnership that I was considering entering into, and then I decided not to. So they would have handled that whole side, the technology side of things. but it's kind of one of those things that I would rather just handle on my own, because I just think that I don't want anyone else's, ideas or personality or whatever to kind of bleed into it. I want it to be completely, me and my voice. And so no concrete plans, but I'm definitely kind of doing, putting out feelers and doing my research, and it will happen one of these days. Now, what exactly it will look like and when it will happen, I do not have the answers to that, but it's something that is just so strong on my heart to do. So yes, it's coming someday.
I mean, that kind of goes right along with like how everyone's changing their careers and stuff during the pandemic, and like it gave us so much like freedom to explore different options and realize that other things were out there. So
yeah, I think if there was any sort of silver lining to the awful pandemic, it's that there are more options. There's a lot more remote opportunities. People aren't chained to a desk. They can live wherever they want to live and still travel and do all these things and still be able to, do their job right from their laptop.
Awesome. And since, it's the literary hype page, and I know you're a huge reader. You read even more than I do, I think.
At least as much, maybe not more.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of like really right neck and neck, at least the last couple of years.
Yeah.
What books are you hyped about lately?
I just started, and I'm not even going to be able to think of the name. Book Lovers. Book Lovers or Book Lover. It's the new Emily Henry book, which I am not really like a chick lit girl anymore. It's just not, it doesn't usually keep my attention, but somebody told me about The People You Meet on Vacation, and I read it and I was glued to it, and I just read it probably within a day. And then I read the other book, Beach Read, and then my friend and I were at the bookstore the other day and I saw that she had a new one and it's about books. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get this book. So I've just started reading it. It's really good so far. So yeah, loving it.
Well, then I will not say anything if you've not finished it.
No spoilers, but I mean, I feel like they're kind of easy to figure out, like chick lit books. So I'm pretty sure I know where it's going, but I think it's going to be a fun journey to get there.
Yeah, that is like, it's like the downside and the upside of chick lit and like romance is that you know where it's headed. So it's more of a
I think, and you can probably testify this too. I think if you are an avid reader and then on top of that you've had anything to do with television production, you have a mind, you see how the pieces come together when you're reading a book, and you know where the story is going like way before you ever get there. So even when I read mysteries, thrillers, suspense, anything like that, I usually can identify the killer or what's going to happen next like midway through the book. So that's sort of the downside of being someone who has that kind of mind, I guess, but it's still fun to read the books.
That is definitely my bar for like mystery thrillers, is how fast I figure it out.
Yes.
There was, I don't know if you've read The Sinful Lives of Trophy Wives. That one tricked me. I thought it was legit everybody but the person it was. It was good.
You'll have to text me that so I remember. I don't know if you've read The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Phenomenal. That's not one that I recently read, but it's honestly it's probably one of the best books that I've ever read. So I've been real hyped up to talk about that one, because I wasn't familiar with her before I read the book, and then I think it was just part of my book of the month club or something, and oh my gosh, just such a great story.
Yeah, that one was good. They re-released one of her older books, The Divorce Party, and the whole time I was just like waiting for someone to be murdered. I was like, who's gonna do it?
Yeah, because her books really aren't like mystery-ish, and then that one was. I mean, it was, but then it was also sort of, there was some romance built in, so it was just a perfect mix of everything. I'm also reading some book. I can't even remember the title. It's something about women and wolves. It's about celebrating. Do what?
The Women Who Run with Wolves?
Yes. It's about celebrating the spirit of women. And I just started it. And so, yeah, I could not think of the name. I was like, I know I'm going to get it wrong. Something with wolves. But yeah, it's really good so far.
Bookseller brain.
Yep. I knew you would. If anybody would know it, you would. Yeah, no, I actually have bought the same book before, like the book that I've already read. I'll get it home and I'll be like, and I didn't recognize the cover, which I normally do, but it's happened a few times. And I'll start reading and I'm like, gosh, this sounds familiar. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'll look on my shelf and there it is. I've already bought it before. So the perils of being a bookworm, I suppose.
I feel like we've all done that at least once or twice.
For sure.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, just buy the book. TurnTowardTheSunBook.com. It has all the retailers. You can find it anywhere books are sold.
There will be a link in below with that information as well, and where to find Mandy on social media.
Awesome.
And a pleasure talking to you as always.
Always a joy.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mandy Hale. If you're interested in buying her book, Turn Toward the Sun, or any of her other ones, those links are going to be down below, as well as links to find her on social media, my review of her books, and where else you can find me on the internet. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with your friends. Look forward to seeing you next time.